here to call this meeting to order. If we could go around the table and introduce ourselves for those watching via home or from the recording, and then also for folks to introduce themselves around the room. Fran, you want to start?
Fran Aaron, committee member.
Kelly Rosecrans, I'm the Park and Recreation Commission representative to this commission.
Todd Turkey, City Alderman.
Joe Eichstead, Secretary. Tim Burkhauser, Commission Member. Shane Burkhart, Commission Member.
Adam Tagan, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Bob Plucker, here for,
Lori Genzel.
I'm Mike Rajewski.
Jim Stack.
Mary Beth Richardson, Lois Johnson.
Anita Hines.
Okay, thank you all for being
Maybe
here.
back here.
I'm sorry, and Karen hiding in the corner in the newspaper.
Daily Tribune.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, item number 1 is the approval of the reports from the March 2nd and March 16th Planning Commission meetings. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding that, those two reports?
I move they approved as read.
Second.
We have a motion by Fran to approve, second by Kelly. Any discussion on the two reports? Hearing none, we'll move into a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. That passes. Under 2 tonight, maps and plats received. There were no other maps or plats received for our consideration. Moving to item number 3, which is a public hearing on Plan 150114, Mary Beth Richardson. The applicant is requesting to allow a major home occupation within the R2 1-family and 2-family residential district. The subject property is located at 611 Baker Street. With that, I will open the public hearing. Mary Beth, you're here.
Yes.
And you'd like to maybe speak to your request, if you'd like. I'm assuming you'd speak in favor, so I'll ask for the first time anyone wishing to speak in favor, so. Come.
I am starting a gluten-free pizza crust business, and I have sampled it out. I've worked on it for 2.5 years, been sampling for 4. And I have found that the only way I can start is if I do it myself. So I have a small room in the basement, and I can start there debt-free and hopefully grow the business, and so I can get into something bigger where I can actually make the whole pizza. So
Excellent. You didn't bring samples tonight.
I didn't know
With
what's
the
required.
With the toppings, no, thank you.
They are very good. I've had them tested by, I had another company that sent them out for me.
Okay,
And so when the whole pizza is completed, I hope that it will be a frozen pizza in grocery stores.
excellent.
But I've sent it out to the Iron Chef program, Schwann's. They're all interested in it. But of course, I'm not going to start that in my basement.
Mhm.
It's just to start the crust. So,
Excellent. Okay. Anyone else for the second time wishing to speak in favor of the request? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? And I'll ask anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request? Anyone wishing to, yes, ma'am.
Not in opposition.
Sure.
I just have a question.
Please.
I mean, is this where we ask our question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'm a new homeowner on the same street, and I guess my concern is that, is this just, is this changing our zoning? Or is this just allowing her to make these in her basement?
That's the second part, and I'll ask Adam to indicate as to why it comes before this group, because it is kind of a technicality as to why it's in front of the plan commission.
Yeah, I guess basically I'll start with home occupations. There's 2 levels of home occupations. One is a minor home occupation. Basically that's something very small scale that doesn't require really, most people wouldn't even know it's there. It doesn't require any stock on site. Their employees are only family members. Those type of things, they just need to get a $50 permit through the city, and there's no formal hearing process like this. The second stage is a major home occupation, which is what Mary Beth is applying for. Basically because she's going to be having stock and producing something on site, that's what triggers this. And so this request is specific only to allow the major home occupation. It is not changing the zoning at all. It will stay zoned R2, which allows single and 2-family homes on it. It would not allow another commercial business to be located there. It would only allow another home-based business if they complied with all the standards that she has to comply with. Gas station or something like that appearing on the property would not happen, and it is site-specific to her property. It does not affect any of the surrounding properties.
is it a permanent thing or is it something she has to reapply for regularly?
It's basically, this process is a one-time process, but if something changes, then she would have to get re-verified by our department. So basically, the Planning and Economic Development Department oversees these to make sure that they're still in compliance.
Okay, now in this, she also stated that there would be no employees there and she would not be having deliveries there. What if 6 months down the road, those things change? What are our rights after that?
Well, and I can provide you with I think it's 10 standards that she has to comply with in order to still be considered a major home occupation. So for example, that limits the number of employees. I think she can add 1 non-family member employee. So it could be increased to a very small scale, but if she begins to go above and beyond that, that's when she would have to either A, look at rezoning her property, which probably isn't the best route, and or B, looking at a commercial location. So moving out of that location.
And I have one more
Please.
question. Would there be ovens installed? I mean, will she be cooking this product or are you just preparing a?
I have an oven, and I've had it down there for ever.
So my concern would be then changing, the fire, with my insurance company saying, okay, there's this woman 2 doors down making pizzas in her basement and it's increased the fire risk and my insurance changing. So these are just
Sure.
concerns I have.
No, she does have to comply with the health department for a commercial kitchen license when they go in there and verify that there's sufficient, basically it's all up to a level that's above and beyond what a residential kitchen would be. So that is a requirement of this as well.
So we don't have to eject or approve today, we have time according to this?
So today is a public hearing, so you
Mhm.
you formulate your opinion to the commission, and then the commission will be taking action at our next step tonight, and then it'll be forwarded on to the council.
Right, but to do a formal legal objection, you have up until the council date to file that with the city clerk.
There were 2 other conditions I think Adam had in his staff report, which for folks that may have questions, obviously we've got the report, but no outdoor storage of goods, so in terms of that, and then the parking demand, there can't be any generation of additional demand, which there is no on-street parking on Baker anymore, and so it would only be what's in the driveway essentially there. Those are just 2.
And I did want to speak to deliveries. I have another company that I'm going to have my product delivered to, and I will pick it up from there. So there's no trucks coming there, there's no deliveries.
Thank you. And then, third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request for the major home occupation? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, move into item number 4, which is action on Plan 15000114. Mary Beth Richardson. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding that request?
I'd just like to mention that there was a business there one other time before in that same location, right?
My husband was a builder.
No, but before that, I'm talking about, wasn't Blake Schultz, didn't he?
It was
have
next
a-
door, or down a couple houses.
Isn't this the same house?
Mm-mm.
No,
Was it?
611 Baker.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I guess from the outward appearance, it's gonna appear no different than a house. There's not gonna use it to trucks or
You'll
anything,
never know
so.
that there's a business there.
Yeah, there's most likely several hundred, if not 1,000 home-based businesses scattered throughout the city, and most likely you don't know that they're there. That's
And the city
Well, they're
doesn't know they're
intended
there either. That's the other challenge. They happen. We all know of them, right?
I move we approve.
I have a motion by Fran, second by Tim to approve. Any further discussion by anybody? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That item passes. So at this point, you kind of know your recourse in terms of communication. We've got one city council here on the commission member and another city council member in the room. So if you have additional concerns and want to get them addressed at the council meeting, which is the 3rd Tuesday here this month at 6 p.m. in the room next door. All right. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5, which is another public hearing on Plan 150160. Mike, how do you pronounce your last name? Ryjeski, thank you. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from R2 1-family and 2-family residential district to the B3 exclusive office district, commercial, should I say commercial district.
That's how it reads in the
It
ordinance.
does read it, okay, backwards. All right, the subject property is located at 540 Pepper Avenue. With that, I'd open the public hearing. Same exercise. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request?
Oh, okay. I'm looking at purchasing this property if I actually have an accepted offer on it. Contingent on me getting it zoned commercial, so Lori can move her insurance agency, which is located in Rapids already, to this facility. So it's like a permanent home for right now. They rent a spot, so that's the reason for this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone for the second time wishing to speak in favor of the request? Please. No, you don't have to say
No,
that.
you don't have to.
Whatever
Let's
you feel
do it
comfortable
official.
doing, yeah.
I just wanna make sure that everybody's aware too that it's only me in there. So there isn't like 10, 15 insurance agents in there with a lot of high traffic, high volume. Getting ready to hire another person. So at most, there'd be 2 of us in there, and I can only see one person at a time, so it isn't like, other businesses where you're going to see a lot of that traffic. The office hours are 9 to 4:30, so we're not there real early, and, obviously we're not there on the weekends. And I'm a very picky person, so it will be very well taken care of.
Good, good. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request?
I would, Jim Holderperson stack.
Okay.
I see it as a good use of the building. It has sat there now for about a year and a half or so. There's been no activity on it. I was wondering, of course, with Mary Beth, you did the major home business, and I understand the difference now. As I came into the meeting, I was wondering why the approval and why the disapproval, but I understand that now because the residents where Mary Beth is where the business will be. In this case, it's another party, but it will not be their residence. So for example, if this was her residence, then she would be doing a major home occupation.
Right.
Is that correct? Correct. So I see it as a good use of the property. The parties understand that they have certain requirements to meet to bring that up to the current codes associated with the city and buildings, and they're ready to do that, so I would speak in favor of the application.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request?
I agree. I went and looked at the property today and there's a tavern right across the street and kind of a
Hilltop.
nursing home or whatever that may be.
Yep.
On the other side of it, it's a nice piece of property. I don't see any problem with what she's doing. Looks good to me.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request?
Can I go
Yes, ma'am.
for it?
Please.
Okay, the owner.
Okay.
I just happen to be in town.
Oh.
It has sat empty at quite a long time.
Okay.
I have a job in another city, so I come back and forth. It's been very hard to sell because of the bar across the street, because of all the businesses around it, and my thought was turning it into a business. There is 2.5 lots there. There's quite a bit of space. So as far as parking, I had looked into it. I had looked into that I could add up to 3,000 square feet of building if I wanted to. I checked with the building inspector. So I myself thought of it for business, but I got my dream job elsewhere. It's my family home, so it's not easy for me to give up. And so I'm actually really excited that it would be a business or something, because with the bar, I'm not even getting a person to look at the place because of all the, there's the auto place, there's Roger Brown has a home occupancy, and there's the bar, and there's the Hilltop. So it's really already almost a commercial area, so I think it would be a great second generation to my family home.
All right, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak? Todd?
And I don't know if I'm not speaking for or against, but I'd like some more clarification. Jim had stated that the premises would not be occupied as a home?
Correct.
It's strictly commercial?
Correct.
Okay. And then as far as the availability for parking, there is adequate property there, but yet only a driveway and a garage. So was something going to be conditional on that?
Yeah, there was, well, I talked to Adam on this, and I think we said for every 300 square feet, wasn't it, of business usage, you have to have a parking stall.
Mhm.
So our plan is to expand the driveway,
Mhm.
at least one more stall.
Okay,
And then we'll have to put in the ramp to make it ADA compliant. And
Okay.
then we'll have to redo the bathroom to make it near 5-foot radius in there, so we can get a wheelchair in there.
okay. Mhm.
Those are the major things that we see, so.
And another,
There'd be a curb cut and a regular parking lot, not, the curb cut would be on Sixth
Yes.
and not on Pepper.
okay,
So it'd be like a side yard. We've talked about, I'm Mike's realtor.
sure,
And, I understand your problem with selling that property. And they've offered, we've talked about, if the city would like, a barrier, like a privacy fence or something to, segregate or create green space between residential and this commercial property. And Mike is willing to do just about anything to make this come together.
Mhm.
And if the commission has suggestions,
And I went through and I talked to all the property owners within 160 feet. And everybody was pretty positive about it, so. Any objections?
I guess I also inspected the property on Saturday with Lois. And I seen to the south, the property line, and it looks like there would be sufficient room there for additional parking.
Sure.
And especially if you're going to, again, cutting the curb. As far as the criteria we had, as far as extending the boundary, as far as the commercial businesses, not only is there Brown's Auto Body and the Sunrise, but there's Reeves Greenhouse, there's Becker Vision, there's a lot of commercial establishments already to the west, and I would look at Pepper Avenue as more of a commercial type corridor rather than a Grove Avenue or one of these other streets. Pepper Avenue already is commercialized on the east side of A Street and on the west side, so I guess that's my feelings on that.
Okay, Adam, did you want to speak to your staff report before I close the public hearing?
Certainly. Admittedly, this was a gray case, I guess. There's definitely pros and there's definitely cons on it. Ultimately, I guess the overriding decision was what the adopted comprehensive plan showed. For example, Baker Street on your comprehensive plan is shown as mixed use because it is a corridor that has residential, but it's obviously transitioning slowly over time. For whatever reason, when the comprehensive plan was done, they didn't look at Pepper Avenue the same way. They said they wanted it to remain residential. So that ultimately is where the decision-making process comes down. I would encourage the commission that if this is approved, what needs to be relooked at is the Pepper Avenue corridor and how we identify it on the comprehensive plan. If we're truly looking to continue this creep or advancement of commercial and expansion on this street, then it really should be identified in your plans so that it's not just picking and choosing as properties come in, so that it's at least a consistent growth along that corridor. But ultimately, like I said, it did come down on the side of denial just based on the plans and the fact that even though there's a bar across the street, it is zoned residential. Even though Hilltop is there, it's zoned residential. So there isn't that commercial zoning along the corridor. There's commercial uses and home occupations, and it's definitely a mix. I'm not denying that, but that's where we came from. So.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing. We've heard from, so moving to item 6, which is action on the plan. We've heard from Fran and Todd. Anybody else wishing to speak to the request? Right, entertain a motion as well. Folks, anybody else want to make a comment? I'll make a couple of, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one thing, before I forget with the fence comment, completely supportive of something like that, but when it's a rezoning, it's a yes or a no approval by the commission. So it's either yes, you're okay with it, or no, you're not. It's not like a conditional use, which comes before the board where you can add those conditions, or like the home occupation where you could add conditions. So it would be on the new purchaser's honor, I guess. If he says he's gonna put a fence, the commission and the council would have to rely on him doing that rather than putting a condition on the.
Couldn't that go through more of the building inspector? Or
Well, we would approve the permit, but we can't force him to put in that fence unless there's an ordinance that we can enforce. If he's doing it voluntarily, we would just rely on him doing it. Not saying you would or you wouldn't, it's just
I love
clarifying.
fences, so.
Fences make good neighbors.
Depends on where the fence is placed.
Right.
I move we
Like
accept
my
the
dad's
proposal.
fence,
I'll
yeah.
second.
We have a motion to approve by Fran, second by Todd. Move into discussion. I would make a couple of comments. While today we're really understood at what the specific use is, you decide to move your business somewhere and grow it, it's now zoned that. And I'm very concerned to what extent, because it is such a large lot, to the extent that someone else can tear it down and do what they want. You know, we've got I would say less than ideal sort of creep. Adam said the word creep. That's one word that I thought about during this whole thing, is the creep that happens. We've got a lot of business districts, as we all know in this community, that have a lot of vacant storefronts to them. And when we convert these single-family homes to home-based businesses, or in this case, you're a true business. You're not a home. It's just going to be, you're going to convert a home to a business. I get really concerned about what that does long-term to these neighborhoods, because you will have traffic, right? Maybe not a lot of traffic, but you will have traffic. You'll have parking. You'll have people in and out. So, you know, I'm more inclined to deny it, not because I think, you know, that's a warranted use of space. It just happens to be that these things are so, you know, they get so creeped in these neighborhoods, and then it leaves these vacant storefronts open for years and years to come, because everybody thinks now, well, I can buy a cheap home and convert it to an insurance business or whatever the next business might be. So I just want to share my thoughts with you on it. I see this happening all across the city. Whether or not they have to come to the city for rezoning or they get away with moving their business in there, it doesn't create good transitions, as the comprehensive plan calls it, for use and for space. So that's my opinion. I recognize completely 100% what happens across the street and down the street and further down the street. But how do you ever fix a problem like that if you continue to allow it? So those are my comments. We have a motion and a second to approve the request. I'd entertain any other discussion or comments from anybody on the request.
I think the time to stop the creep was before. The creep has already taken place.
Yeah.
So the businesses that are there, existing, they're there. You're not gonna get them out. So I think, again, Pepper Avenue is more an exception to the rule. It's not totally residential now. It's littered with commercial properties. So the time to stop the creep was before, not now.
Unless we add yet another problem to the mix, is my point. That's just my position. Yes, sir.
The other option typically is what happens is she'll end up selling the property to a landlord, and the property, adjacent property to the south, is not owner occupied anymore. And we all know that when you put a rental situation in a home like that, there's no pride of ownership. They do what they do as renters. So that, if it were denied, that house will probably end up being a
A
single-family
residence
rental.
still, but it'd be a residence, yeah.
Okay, I think it would be much more attractive with what they're talking about than going with what's actually right next door.
I would just make,
Yes.
when we have it as a family home, right before I bought it, they had done a study on how many cars a day. It was like around 5,000 cars a day, and that was a long time ago. It was about 10 years ago. So it is a major thoroughfare in Rapids. It's the cut through, you know, to skip different areas to get over to Lincoln Street, to get all the way to First, Third. I liked your idea of mixed, you know, I think that mixed, whatever you called it, mixed business idea, mixed residential. It's already there, you know, the YMCA on the other end, and, you know, the ODC, and, you know, it's just the whole strip is kind of business-like. So, and it is just a main.
Yeah, exactly, both sides.
Right, it's a main thoroughfare, just
Yeah.
especially between A Street and Lincoln and, you know, such, so. Just wanted to put that in.
And Don't
Joe,
there
please.
isn't Becker Eye Vision on that?
Further down,
Yes.
Joe, please.
Just a quick thought. The only thing that I would be concerned about is kind of the unforeseen consequences, the complaints, you know, as long as the owner now is a good steward, a good owner, you know, those relationships with the neighbors, not a problem. But, you know, down the road, those unforeseen consequences. Could be, there could be complaints and different things that get generated, but what I was gonna ask Adam is there any way, like the fence thing, if there's a parking lot or if, people are pulling their vehicles in, and we've seen that in the past where the lights from vehicles or whatever it is becomes an issue. Is there anything that could be done to get the fence in there or some other criteria?
We do have a section in our ordinance in the parking regulations that states that headlights cannot directly enter a residence. So it's kind of vague, but that has been used in the past to require a fence or at least green shrubs or something like that to minimize that. So depending on, I haven't obviously seen a full layout of what it's going to be, but based on how that parking lot is laid out, that may be a possibility where that would trigger that requirement for fencing or screening.
In terms of once we've rezoned it, the ownership changes 2 years from now as she grows or wants to get in a different location, we're stuck with it, obviously, as a business zoning.
Right, that's why I included the zoning district this time around, which I'm going to try and remember to do in other rezonings, because it actually details out then what uses would be permitted. Because again, it's above and beyond what they're proposing. But one thing I will, to Mike's credit, when I met with them originally, they were looking at more like a general business district, which would be the A Street corridor, which allows pretty much any type of commercial use. And after our conversation, he said, well, it's for the insurance agency. So we looked at the zoning code in the B3 district. Still commercial, but it's a much more limited commercial district. It basically allows office and professional services by right. So those are going to be limited to, a chiropractor's office, insurance, very limited. It's not going to allow a retail or a bar or something like that that would really take it to the next level. So if there is a positive about going to rezoning, at least it's a limited rezoning to a commercial district versus throwing open the floodgates, as it were.
And there's plenty of room in there to grow, expand the way the home is set up.
But it was still constructed as a residence, so I'm just
No,
trying to
you
think from
were
a
talking
desirability
about it
standpoint.
getting bigger.
Sure.
If I would move,
Yeah.
no.
But I mean, they could tear it down and then now it would be, if I went property behind you or around the corner, even though you've surveyed them and asked them, the next owner decides they'd like to do this, they've got some latitude to be able to do it within reason in the
Sure.
zoning. So I'm not so concerned about today. I completely trust and agree that, you're gonna do a great job and keep it looking nice like it were your own home. But, at the end of the day, I've got to think, long term, and I'm just concerned about that long term. If I was in the situation when Mike Sunrise was gonna put in, knowing what we know today, would we have allowed it? I don't know. So that's the thing. We reverse the equation, and I'm not so certain. So that's just my comments. And again, I think you're gonna do a great job there. It's a concern that I've got to voice those concerns. So we've got a motion and a second to approve. Any other comments from anybody on that?
Is there another course of action that would allow for only when she's there? And then we don't, it's like a temporary or a conditional
It's yes or no.
zoning?
So we
I
can't
know
do
it's
it.
in this case, but is there a different course of action that could accommodate the good thing today, but yet prevent the future?
Normally, that would be a conditional use type of thing, that it's specific to a type of use. Within the residential districts, about the only conditional uses they're very limited. It doesn't include office type uses. There's always a way, but it would be a very unusual, creative way, looking at a customized zoning district and things, which is not really what the ordinance is meant to do. So this is, I guess, the best route for what they want to do based on what's in the ordinance.
Any other questions or discussion from anybody? Okay. Well, with that said, we'll move into a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That'd be myself, Joan and myself. And one abstention. So motion carried. 4 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 abstention. So this will now go on to the full council then for their approval, correct? At the council meeting here in a couple of weeks. So that's at 6 p.m. 21st, thank you. I couldn't think it through the date, but third Tuesday is how I always have it in my head. Okay, thank you for being here. And we're all through with your agenda items. Item number 7 on our agenda is the waterfront planning update. I had asked Adam to what extent we wanted to maybe discuss this item on the planning commission, given the fact that the city's planning commission had a role at the time in things like the creation of the waterfront plan and some of the other things. So Adam had prepared a well-written memo, I would say, kind of highlighting 4 of the area elements as it relates to the city's sort of look and view of activities in the waterfront district. The first of which, and maybe I guess Adam, you can walk through if you'd like, otherwise if maybe commissioners have questions as well.
I mean, I don't have a lot of new things to add, but basically what I kind of wanted to do is take you through kind of some of the start with the green space, which is the RFP that is currently out. We have put that out. We've gotten probably about 10 responses on that. The goal of that request for proposal is really to look at the entire green open space corridor from the expressway on the south to as far north as Village of Beering, if we're looking at the east side, and probably the mill on the west side of the river. So that as we're investing in that, as we're rehabbing things, that there's a comprehensive look to it. If you look downtown now, obviously it's a little disjointed when you look through the different parks. You have 3 different lighting styles, 2 different paving styles, and it just doesn't really flow together. So the goal is to really kind of take a step back and say, how do we want this to look? And then that's what we invest towards. So that request for proposal is ongoing. I think the deadline is Friday, actually, to hear back from consultants. Then we would go through a consultant screening process, and then ultimately that would be brought to the council for their approval of that consultant and any cost associated with it. So that's kind of just looking at the green space. Tied to that is the DNR stewardship grant. We're working with a local engineering firm to put that application together. It can be a substantial application. I think Beering's was 150 pages, give or take. So it's not a small application because you need a lot of supporting documentation. But ultimately, that would be looking for matching funds to help invest in the bike trail project that's proposed on the east side. And again, that runs from approximately Grand Avenue down to the expressway. And any enhancements that would be there, lookouts, park benches, lighting, all those type of things. So that's a somewhat creative funding source. We're looking to support that previous RFP.
It sounds like, given the state budget situation, that this is probably one of our better chances between now and foreseeable future to receive state dollars for improvements like this. So we kind of hurried up to get our ducks in a row to get an application in, and both Joe and Adam have spent a lot of time working with the consultant and the DNR to try to get that. It sounds like there could be $450,000, maybe as much as available for local support, to support our local dollars on it.
And then from there, kind of transition more from the open space to the developed space. So I'm sure you've seen articles in the paper, one done by Karen, ironically. But basically, the city has identified one of the blocks for redevelopment within the downtown. If you're at all familiar with the waterfront plan, there are numerous locations throughout the waterfront area that are identified as potential redevelopment areas, either because of blight or underutilization or decaying buildings, whatever that case may be. So one of the kind of entry points, I guess, into the waterfront area is that Baker Street corridor as you come down the hill and approach this block. So the city has purchased a few properties on that block already, and we're continuing to negotiate and try to acquire as much of that block as possible. And then after that, we would be looking at going out and seeing what kind of development interest there is. The city has no desire to obviously redevelop it on our own. We're trying to assemble and get the properties together and cleaned up so that we can then turn it over to someone to actually do the development. And we have approached the county on a potential partnership for that project as well. They've been doing their space needs analysis. The location right across from the courthouse seems to make some sense as a potential solution for them as well. So we're trying to build that partnership through this process as well.
What properties down there? So that was just that, I would call the old Lucas building, right? That one was just purchased by the city?
Mm-hmm. Spath and USDA, and then the large parking lot next to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what.
So the only other building on that block then is the Labor Temple yet?
No, the whole triangle.
Oh.
So that's being viewed as a block anyway.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so Good Time Charlie's, 4 Stools, there's the old annex building, and there's Timothy Ritz's law office would kind of round out that entire area. But again, we're approaching them if they're willing. doing. So if they're not willing, then obviously we'll try and get a redevelopment in there that would work around those properties. But the goal is to get as much as possible. And then obviously with the city investing so much in there, there's rumors abounding everywhere. You can't avoid rumors anywhere. So the goal of the next bullet point is basically to pull together the downtown property owners and make sure that we get them all together. They understand the past planning that has gone into the waterfront area, looking at what the city is currently doing and actually being able to tell them all what we're looking at versus rumors. And then really, ultimately, I think our goal is to allow them to stand up and say what are their goals for their privately owned parcels, so that we can begin to try and align all these different moving parts so that we're all moving forward in the same direction. So if the city's going one way and someone else is going the other, and we don't want to waste anyone's efforts. So getting everyone together and talking is the goal of this. I think the mayor has identified that this is most likely going to be stage one of what would potentially be multiple meetings to try and build that support. There's been talk in the past of the city looking at more of a downtown-centric organization that may grow out of some of these conversations. So this is kind of the starting point for that as well. So again, as the memo states, this is really just an attempt to make sure that you guys, who are the main planning group for the city, you're the group that deals with the zoning ordinances, with the long-range plans, the waterfront plans. So making sure you're seeing that there is something coming out of the work that this commission has done in the past, and we're really trying to gain traction and make those plans a reality.
I did share with you the memo that went out, or the invite that went out to property owners downtown. They received it probably Saturday. So you are obviously invited to attend as well. The idea is, as Adam said, to sort of educate and inform. Largely the downtown plan and all these plans only are worth anything if people comply with them, right? As the city, we've invested in these things, determine best land use and all that sort of thing. And to the extent that we can coordinate activities to make sure that we're upholding a standard for redevelopment is important to us. And long term, do we make decisions in a vacuum in today's economic times, or we make decisions long term for the betterment of the community? So we want to get that message across to all the property owners. And the series, as Adam kind of alluded, if we hit the downtown business owners, the property owners, not everyone that is a property owner is a business owner, and vice versa. So we want to be as inclusive as possible, so we're educating folks as we go along. And then obviously to dispel sort of rumors or concerns or questions people might have as to the city's role in property acquisition. So those are all items, and obviously this is all connected, and we're not doing one thing, just one off here, there, and everywhere. The city views very strongly that the strength of the downtown business district, as is the strength of the West Side Industrial Park or the A Street Business District, all of which need to have some sort of economic activity in order to be successful. And we're seeing, obviously, based on the amount of property sales, we're going to light up a map that shows how many property sales that have occurred in the last couple of years, 2-3 years. It's tremendous how many commercial properties have turned. So to get property owners and other people understood the past planning that the city has done is really important to us. Any questions or thoughts for Adam or I on those?
Well, I'm happy that you're doing something with that area, because it's really kind of a blight. It really is. Do you have any ideas or what you'd like to really put in there?
We have a vision. We haven't gotten it tested via market feasibility or anything yet, but the idea, as Adam stated in here, we recognize, this was a prime example, our housing stock isn't the most attractive housing stock to be a kind of well-rounded, sort of future-proofed community. And we have a lack of multifamily in the downtown area compared to most communities that are starting to kind of have that demand downtown. So housing is a component. Adam mentioned the county's participation. The county has a fairly substantial amount of office space that they'd like to bring downtown and pull out of different nooks and crannies in the city. So to assist them in that regard, and then so it'd be mixed use. It'd be 3 to 4 stories most likely. First story being retail and restaurant shops, that sort of transactional activity. And then, so whether they're apartments or condos or a mixture on the residential unit side, this is all just visionary component, because we've got some interest from developers, but we haven't formally engaged with them to say, well, we want you to put together a feasibility study for us to determine what the market's capable of. we know on the housing side, based on the amount of interest, even in another, yet another multifamily housing, that there is demand here, that these developers will continue to build on their own. And to the extent that we can sort of corral them to do it not in a sprawl sense, where they're putting them on the edge of town everywhere, we're not gonna have, I mean, so there's the theory and the strategy is you build demand by having these units in the center part of the city.
Another question I would have is, of course, we all know that land is contaminated.
Yes,
Are we
right.
taking on the responsibility then of cleanup?
We very well could, and it's petroleum, so in terms of the scheme of all of the whole spectrum of all the contaminations, it's a much easier process than some of the other ones. Part of why the city is involved, I think, is because of the contamination. We know that nobody's gonna come in there today and spend a certain amount of money to buy it and a certain amount of money to tear it down and a certain amount to clean it up. So we're gonna need to leverage some state sources to help clean it up. So, and that's the one step, if we can acquire the Charlie's building, is to, get some cleanup dollars from the state for site assessment and possibly cleanup.
Because
There should be some brownfield grant stuff that is available for petroleum cleanup stuff.
Right, yeah, and even above and beyond petroleum, anytime it's city-owned property, the fund potential grants and things like that open up considerably versus if it was privately owned.
Has phase
So even
one
if we're-
already been done on that?
Yeah, phase one has been done, basically on all the properties that the city, all along, well, I guess, what is that, First Street on the west, so that analysis has been done. We're not sure what actually lies underneath the Good Time Charlie's building, because you can't really test when the building's there, so that's one of the funding sources we'd be looking at, is a grant basically to help take down the building so that we can test underneath it and figure out if there's additional contamination there.
is the
But
Labor
it's
Temple.
just petroleum.
Sorry.
No, I was just
Is
gonna,
the Labor Temple wanting to sell or agreeable to sell?
yeah.
And you
All
have-
our, I mean, without, it's mostly really a closed session discussion in terms of property, but they're all interested in what the city wants to do there.
Okay, so I mean, you've got an agreement
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, none of that would happen until we formally had purchase
Yeah, okay.
agreements in place.
Good Time Charlie's is the Labor Temple, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of vacancy, I mean, it's obviously, you alluded to the
Oh,
blight
sure.
issue, there's a contamination issue, but wanted to at least bring some of those things to the commission in case, obviously, you're going to hear about them, and so, if you want to participate or attend that evening. City council is going to continue to have discussions as the process goes on, so, keep these guys informed or ask them questions as the process proceeds.
The waterfront properties that run north of the Jackson Street Bridge, north of this old swimming pool and stuff like that, you were talking about extending the trail to Buren? Okay. Along the river there, is that city property, or is that something we have to acquire?
To the
Well,
tracks is,
yeah. Basically, there's city or FERC land that basically will get you almost all the way up to the railroad. From there, you're probably looking more on street in nature
Oh,
for the
okay,
bike paths,
okay.
just because of ownership, and there's a lot of homes between there and where you would connect with here. So
Mhm.
definitely would be a combination, but pretty much everything from the swimming pool down to Jackson is all city owned,
Mhm.
either right away or parkland.
Sure, okay.
other comments or questions on that front? Okay, stay plugged in and we'll keep you informed.
And Mayor, it's not on the agenda, so, but this is just a FYI as well. We're gonna be going out for a request for proposals on the zoning update that I've been kind of keeping you guys up to date. I'm sure none of you are that bored that you'll actually wanna read said.
I did read it a couple times, it's riveting,
but-
yeah.
Just for your information, and then if you have any questions on the contact, feel free to contact me. So, like I said, no need to discuss, just a FYI for you.
And you'll see there's a timeline in there just so you kind of know how it's gonna proceed. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
With a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here and go Badgers.
Good,